After lunch, they went to the reptile house. It was cool and dark, with lit windows all along with the walls. Behind the glass, all sorts of lizards and snakes were crawling and slithering over bits of wood and stone. Dudley and Piers wanted to see huge, poisonous cobras and thick, man-crushing pythons. Dudley quickly found the largest snake in the place. It could have wrapped in a body twice around Uncle Vernon's car and crushed it in a trash can. But at the moment, it didn't look in the mood. In fact, it was fast asleep. Dudley stood with his nose pressed against the glass, staring at the glistening brown coils. "Make it move!" he whined at his father. Uncle Vernon tapped on the glass, but the snake didn't budge. "Do it again!" Dudley ordered. Uncle Vernon rapped the glass smartly with the guncles, but the snake just snoozed on. "This is boring," Dudley moaned. He shuffled away. Harry moved in front of the tank and looked intently at the snake. He wouldn't have been surprised if it had died of boredom itself. No company except stupid people drumming their fingers on the glass trying to disturb it all day long. It was worse than having a cupboard as a bedroom, where the only visitor was Aunt Putania hammering on the door to wake you up. At least he got to visit the rest of the house. The snake suddenly opened its beady eyes. Slowly, very slowly, it raised its head until its eyes were on a level with Harry's. It winked. Harry stared. Then he looked quickly around to see if anyone was watching. They weren't. He looked back at the snake and winked too. The snake jerked its head towards Uncle Vernon and Dudley, then raised its eyes to the ceiling. It gave Harry a look that said quite plainly, "I get that all the time." "I know," Harry murmured through the glass. Through he wasn't sure the snake could hear him. It was really annoying. The snake nodded vigorously. "Where do you come from anyway?" Harry asked. The snake jabbed its tail at a little sign to the glass. Harry peered at it. "Boa constrictor, Brazil." Was it nice there? The boa constrictor jabbed its tail at the sign again, and Harry read on. This specimen was bred in the zoo. "Oh, I see. So you have never been to Brazil?" As the snake shook its head, a deafening shout behind Harry made both of them jump. "Dudley, Mr. Dudley, come and look at the snake. You won't believe what it's doing." Dudley came waddling towards them as fast as he could. "Out of the way, you!" he said, punching Harry in the ribs. Caught by surprise, Harry fell hard on the concrete floor. What come next happened so fast no one saw how it happened. 1 second, Pius and Dudley were leaning right up close to the glass. The next, they had leaped back with howls of horror. Harry sat up and gasped. The glass front of the boa constrictor's tank had vanished. The great snake was uncoiling itself rapidly, slithering out onto the floor. People throughout the reptile house screamed and started running for the exits. As the snake slid swiftly past him, Harry could have sworn a low hissed voice said, "Brazil, here I came." "Thanks, amigo." The keeper of the reptile house was in shock. "But the glass," he kept saying. "Where did the glass go?" The zoo director himself made Aunt Petunia a cup of strong sweet tea while he apologized over again. Pius and Dudley could only gibber. As far as Harry had seen, the snake hadn't done anything except snap playfully at their wheels as it passed. But by the time they were all back in Uncle Vernon's car, Dudley was telling them how it had nearly bitten off his leg, while Pius was swearing it had tired to squeeze him to death. But worst of all, for Harry at least, was Pius calming down enough to say, "Harry was talking to it. Weren't you, Harry?" Uncle Vernon waited until Pius was safely out of the house before starting on Harry. He was so angry. He could hardly speak. He managed to say, "Go. Cupboard. Stay. No meals." Before he collapsed into a chair and Aunt Petunia had run and get him a large brandy. Harry lay in his dark cupboard much later, wishing he had a watch. He didn't know what time it was. He couldn't be sure the Dursleys were asleep yet. Until they were, he couldn't risk sneaking to the kitchen for some food. He would lived with Dursleys almost 10 years. 10 miserable years. As long as he could remember, ever since he had been a baby and his parents had died into the car crash. He couldn't remember being in a car when his parents had died. Sometimes, when he stained his memory during long hours in his cupboard, he came up with a strange vision, a blinding flash of green light and a burning pain on his forehead. This, he supposed, was the crash, though he couldn't imagine where all green light came from. He couldn't remember his parents at all. His aunt and uncle never spoke about them, and of course, he was forbidden to ask questions. There were no photographs of them in the house. When he had been younger, Harry had dreamed and dreamed of some unknown relation coming to take him away, but it had never happened. The Dursleys were his only family. Yet, sometimes thought, or maybe hoped, that strangers in the street seemed to know him. Very strange strangers. They were two. A tiny man in violet top hat had bowed in him once, while out shopping, and Aunt Petunia and Dudley, after asking Harry furiously if he knew the man, and Putania had rushed them out of the shop without buying anything. A wild looking woman dressed all in green had waved merrily at him once on a bus. A black man in a very long purple coat had actually shaken his hand in a street the other day and then walked away without a word. The weirdest thing about all these people was the way they seemed to vanish the second Harry tried to get a closer look.